What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today I would like to talk about the top 5 things I recommend you do to your vehicle or your Civic Type R to get it ready for the winter. Now, if you're like me and you live in the snow belt of Canada, which is like Southern Ontario, where we have a lot of precipitation, we generally get a lot of snow, and we do see a lot of road salt, these are things that you are definitely going to want to do before taking this vehicle out onto the road before the salt hits the ground. So first thing I recommend is giving your vehicle a really good wash. And when you give it a good wash, you are going to take the opportunity to go over it, every panel, and look for any stone chip you can find. Now, you can go into any of your Honda dealers and pick up a touch-up pen, or you can go into an auto body supply shop, give them the paint code, and they can mix you up a touch-up stick. Now, I generally recommend just going to the dealer. It's really easy and it's affordable. And the touch-up pen, albeit the little brush that it comes with, isn't necessarily the best. However, it does get the job done. There were a couple of stone chips on my vehicle that I noticed after giving it a good wash that I addressed, because you don't want that exposed metal to then come in contact with road salt, which could not only corrode that spot specifically, but it'll creep beneath the paint and potentially corrode more places on the body panels. So outside of doing that, the number 2 thing that you're going to want to do is install good winter tires. Now, the 20-inch wheels are near impossible to find a good winter tire set. So I've opted to go with a separate set of wheels and tires. I actually picked up this set from our local supplier, Johnston Research and Performance, JRP in Mississauga, and they hooked it up with some Sparco Pro Corsas, and I've got some Yokohama, I believe they are the Ice Guards. And I had these on my other Type R. I love them. They so far seem to be working really well. So that's the number 2 thing that you're gonna wanna do, and that's an absolute must. Although these cars are amazing and they handle great, the 20s, I'll tell you right now, with those Continentals or whatever replacements you have on them, aren't gonna get you anywhere fast in the wet or icy conditions. The next thing you're gonna wanna do is invest in a good set of mats. Now, I love my WeatherTech mats. The only unfortunate part is I haven't been able to get the fronts yet. They're currently on back order. However, I have received the rears, and you might not be able to see it here because my lighting's a little bit terrible, but I've got the nice 3D printed liners. Now, these liners are 3D scanned so that they fit the floor perfectly. So you're never gonna have any issues with fitment. You're never gonna have a problem with them not fitting properly. And they come up the carpet as well to give you a little added protection. Perfect. The 4th thing you're gonna wanna do is just a general overall maintenance on the vehicle. So as you can see here, I've actually had my brakes replaced, and prior to getting the vehicle out in the winter, we've noticed that the pads and rotors needed some attention. You'll also see that the calipers themselves have been serviced. By looking at all that anti-seize, you can see that the calipers themselves have been serviced, so they are ready to go for the winter. Now, the 5th thing you're gonna wanna do in terms of getting your vehicle ready for the winter, and this is probably the most important, is you're definitely gonna wanna make sure that you always have a full tank of gas. And the reason I say this is because more often than not, and I'm notorious for this as well, when I'm driving around in the summer or the warm weather, I definitely will drive till the point that my gas light comes on and then I go to the gas station. The last thing you want to have happen is to be stuck in inclement weather, whether you get caught up in snow or in ice and you end up in a snowbank and you're stuck there for who knows how long because you're unable to go anywhere and your car runs out of gas. It could be pretty bad. We just recently had a pretty bad ice storm here in Southern Ontario, and friends of mine were caught out in the ice storm in their truck. Their truck ended up getting caught up in a snowdrift, and then boom, they're out in a ditch somewhere. And they were in their truck for 24 hours. Thankfully, they had a full tank of gas. They did have some snacks that they kept in the vehicle, and so they were able to get through the night. So warm blanket, snacks, and definitely a full tank of gas is a must. Now, and it depends on your area, and who knows, like if you're driving generally in the city areas, you're usually not going to run into that sort of issue. However, anywhere outside of that, I would strongly recommend. Well, there's one more step that I deliberately left out. No, there's not just 5 steps. In some places, sure, you might utilize those 5 steps. However, again, living in the Salt Belt of Ontario, this is probably the most critical and bonus step that you should look to do to your vehicle before the salt hits the ground. Today I'm at Crown Rust Proofing here in Stony Creek, and we are getting the Type R oil sprayed. Now, this vehicle, when I purchased it from the dealer that I bought it from, in the service history, the previous owner was only a one-owner car, had it rust-proofed already through the dealer. The dealer tends to use a more like sticky honey approach. I don't really particularly care for it. I used to work at that dealership and I know the product they use. And I'll be honest, it's not exactly the most intrusive product. It doesn't creep. So there are a lot of great products out there. I know a lot of guys like using fluid film now. Crown has been around forever. In all of my years of automotive experience, working in dealerships, being around Hondas specifically, in many cases, older 90s Hondas, and if you know 90s Hondas, you'll know that they were notorious for rusting out. Anytime I ever saw one come in that had zero rust and was driven all year round, I always asked the clients or the customers, what did they do to protect it? And in many cases, obviously, they were garage kept. They washed them frequently over the winter. But the number one, I would say the most consistent and unanimous answer was that they had it crowned annually. And I've had almost all of my vehicles done. And I can tell you right now that I don't own my vehicles a long time, so I can't speak to its longevity, but I can say the product itself works very well. It adheres very well to the metal. It creeps into the metal. It creeps into the nooks and crannies that conventional sprays may not get into, like a wax base or what have you, especially when we get to the colder time of year. A wax base really is activated by heat, and it needs heat in order for it to creep, whereas an oil base like the Crown stuff is going to creep. Now, probably a lot of you are wondering, well, why would you get that done? You got to drill holes into your vehicle and all that other good stuff. And yes, I was really apprehensive at first at having it done. However, the way I look at it is that the only real effective way for them to get the product everywhere is by drilling holes in, your pillars, the rocker, the insides of the rockers. And if you ever look at any vehicle that's corroded, generally these are the areas that these vehicles are going to start corroding from. So it's, in my opinion, a small compromise to have a very small hole drilled that does get covered with what looks like an OEM cover, like a rubber seal. So in many cases, most people can't even detect that there's a hole there that was put in by the aftermarket. A lot of times they just assume that that's a factory dealer hole. So again, if you're a purist and you want to keep this car, absolutely free of anything like that, then you're not driving it in the winter. But because I'm driving it in the winter anyway, and I'm not looking at this as a collector or an inevitable, keep its value high, sell later sort of scenario, I'm looking to maximize and protect my investment. And the only way to do that effectively is by being able to cover every area that I possibly can. So this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And yeah, these guys are great here in Stony Creek. I highly recommend them if you're in the area, and let's get to it.